Bow, bow, bow. Red Barn Build 99 back at you here with another video. You're gonna know what this is. It is the blue Subaru. And for those of you that don't know, Subarus, well, just make sure they have oil. Because this one didn't, and it blew up. The blue Subaru engine is blown. So, I'm gonna be doing a little engine swap for you here. The blue Subaru. Here is a new EJ20 that has 58,000 miles on it. So we got a low mileage, new engine here, and then we've got the motor in the car that is blown up. Believed to have ran low on oil, and my quick diagnosis is it's got a through a bearing, spun a bearing, rod knock, and the owner of the car doesn't really want to have me spend too much time on trying to diagnose it when he got that engine for a really good deal, and he just wants to throw that engine in because that engine's good. Throw that engine in and have it be done, not have to worry and dig into this engine because of the fact that it is most likely blown up. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. Gonna be yanking this engine out, swapping over some things from this engine to that engine, and then putting that engine back in the car. Oh, and also I'm gonna be painting the new lip. He got a replacement for this front lip because this lip got cracked and broke in multiple places. So, gonna be replacing that as well. Let's get to it. Okay, so I'm moving along on taking this engine out. Got the front bumper off, front lip off. Got the headlights out. Got the radiator out. The radiator fans. I've got the starter out, all the transmission bolts out. Got the exhaust disconnected. The fuel lines disconnected. The intercooler out. All the coolant lines disconnected. Wiring harness, AC disconnected. Almost everything is power steering lines. Almost everything is disconnected from the engine. Now, I believe the only thing left that I have to do is get the engine hoist on it, disconnect the engine mounts on the bottom, and then pull this bad boy out. So let's do it. Here is the new turbo that's going to be going in the Subaru. It is, I believe, an OEM turbo. An OEM Mitsubishi turbo going in the Subaru. Wee. So, she's looking pretty. Little tiny little turbo, but she gets the job done. So what I'm going to be doing is putting the new NVIDIA up pipe on to the engine. That way I can then put the turbo onto the up pipe. So I'm gonna do that right now. Okay. So I've been in the process of pulling off the intake manifold off the old engine, which is right here. Going to have to replace all these vacuum lines and and whatnot because they are brittle, hard, and old. So those are gonna have to get replaced. Fuel lines look okay. The rubber fuel lines look okay. They're not too hard. What I've got done here is I've got the NVIDIA up pipe on. What I'm gonna have to do is cut a hole right here in the manifold, the exhaust manifold, or the test pipe right here, one side or the other, and drill a hole and weld in an O2 sensor bung because there is not one on the test pipe, and there needs to be one for the upstream O2 sensor, as you can see right there, which was not on this one. So, and I do not see a hole for it anywhere. So I'm gonna have to add that. So there's gonna be some welding there. But as you can see, the turbo is on. It's just loose. But I had to take the bracket that came on this engine. Did not work with this up pipe and the turbo, so I had to take the bracket off of the old engine and turbo and use that. So right now, what's also different is the drain, the return line for the turbo is different on this engine. These two hard lines are different on this engine. As you can see, they're coming out right here, like that. And if you look at the other engine, how they are coming out of the engine, it's coming out and going directly up, and it's very dirty. And then we have that pipe, hard line, coming out right there and shooting a 90 up. So I'm gonna have to take these off, swap them over to that, clean the heck out of that one, and probably don't have to, but I definitely am gonna have to replace that soft line, that rubber hose that connects the drain line to the turbo. And yeah, so definitely not a direct bolt-on. Definitely having to modify some things and reuse some things. Yeah. So on to that. I'll catch you in the morning. Alrighty. So been doing a few things here. You can see taking everything off this engine, putting it on this engine. Got the new turbo mounted up, down pipe. Or excuse me, up pipe. There's a couple things I have to get replaced. The intake tube got a little parts box. The intake tube, the crankcase breather tube, and hoses or tubes that goes there. And then the intake tube needed to get replaced because that was cracked, where it connects to the turbo, and old. So that's fun. So now what I'm going to be doing is just transferring some more stuff over from the old engine to the new engine. I got to replace, waiting on the new heater pipes, excuse me, these ones, because these ones on the new engine are different than on the old engine, as you can see. Same thing here, except we have a piece that goes off right here and then to the back. This one does not have that pipe, the little pipe that comes off right here, and does not go over here. So waiting on those. And then once those come in, I can put all that stuff underneath, and then I can get the intake manifold back on, throttle bodies, all that back on, all that good stuff. And I'm replacing the injector O-rings. That also. These bad boys. Yep. Okay, so got a little bit of a dilemma, problem. So the old engine has a heater oil cooler line that goes from the water pump housing to the oil filter housing, as you can see. And the new engine does not have that. So basically what I'm gonna have to do is take the timing belt off, take the water pump housing off, swap the new water pump that's over there onto here. Then I'm gonna have to put the old dirty, and I'm gonna have to clean the hell out of that, oil filter housing from there to there, because this engine doesn't have that. And for some really strange reason, the exhaust manifolds are like flipped. The O2 bung that I told you I was going to have to weld in, well, it's over here, but it's on the wrong side. So I have to block that off, which I did, but I'm gonna have to block this port. I'm gonna have to block this off, like where the exhaust goes. I'm gonna have to block that off with a block off plate, and then I'm gonna have to weld an O2 sensor in here or in here, or one of those places. And I'm gonna need a new O2 sensor, because this O2 sensor is seized in there. I heated the hell out of it, tried everything. It's seized in there and about to be fully stripped. So what are you gonna do? Anyway, so new crankcase breather tubing came in, as you can see. That's on. I got the heater pipes off that go right here. I got those off. Waiting for the new ones. I just took off the clutch and flywheel from the old engine and have the flywheel installed in the on the new engine now. I'm just about to install a clutch and pressure plate. And then on to the next thing. So we're gonna be pumping along here. I'm also going to be taking this heat shielding off, just because it's a little loose, and I'm going to be wrapping it with some fiberglass exhaust wrap, because we don't want any rattling once this thing's in there. Anyway, new power steering pump is on the way as well. The old one was leaking like a sieve from the bottom. The new harmonic balancer is right there, all for the old engine. Alternator's good. AC compressor's good. But yeah, slowly moving along on this engine, but it's getting done. I'm also going to be putting the new valve cover gaskets in. Once all the major stuff, front of the engine, top of the engine, it's all taken care of. I'll probably do the valve cover gaskets before the intake manifolds go back on. What I'm doing right now is lining up the timing marks on
on the cam gears on each side, and the crankshaft timing mark right there, because I have to take the timing belt off, and I need to take the tensioner off. I need to take this idler bearing off and pull the water pump housing off, because there's no oil cooler spigot on the water pump housing, nor is there on the oil filter housing, which this engine has. The hose goes to a spigot coming off the water pump housing, and the oil filter connects to an oil filter housing, oil cooler that then has a hose that goes to the block right there. You can't really see. Might be able to see.
So, taking that off right now so I can take that water pump off. And then I gotta take that water pump off as well and swap them. So on to that.
Shed a couple tails on this joint. For real. I can almost taste it. Something like my morning coffee. You would think the moon's been walking. There's something in the way you're talking. I call you when I'm wasted, and I be spilling all my problems. You could be my favorite shawty. There's something I say way too often. Is that you in my head? Smell you on my pillow. Can't get you out my...
So right now, what I'm doing is I have one of the fuel rails off with the injectors. What I'm doing is replacing the injector seals. So we got a small seal O-ring up here at the top. I have like a buffer seal O-ring, U-O-ring right here, and then down here we have another O-ring.
Take it or leave it, I'm trying to pick up the pieces, but I can't promise you the whole thing. And that's the whole thing. Oh, darling, this is not a crime. It's in your nature. Shrink down to size. Still miss your fragrance, girl. Is that you in my head?
Okay, so I've cleaned off the throttle body mating surface on the heads on both sides. I've got I don't know if I told you, the oil drain tube from the turbo on. I've got the oil feed line. I've got this hose on. The turbo is tight to the up pipe. I have the heater bypass pipe on now. Back on. Everything is back on. I did the injector seals, took the intake manifold off of the throttle bodies to clean the throttle body to intake surface and the throttle body to head surface. So cleaned all the surfaces, ready for new gaskets. So I'm going to be putting the intake manifold back on the throttle bodies and putting the fuel lines back on, the injector rails, fuel rails, all of it back together. Yeah. Okay, so I've got the intake manifold, throttle bodies on, the engine harness is on. So the whole intake manifold is on. This whole friggin' mess. The engine harness is all on. I just finished working out these vacuum lines right here. So for all of you that want to know, this goes right here. This line goes to the intake tube. This line goes to the T, and the back of the T goes to the metal line that's on the fuel lines under here. You'll see when you take it apart. It goes to the forward one, so the one closest to you. The back of the T, that hose goes to that one. This T, so the forward part of the T comes out and goes to this side. The T goes from right here to this hose, which goes to this sensor. The hose goes to the top hose on this sensor, the T. And then the bottom hose on the sensor goes up to the top of the intake manifold. Just so, just for you guys, taking it apart. And then the engine harness plugs are pretty straightforward. Now what I'm gonna do, new power steering pumps on also. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do the valve cover gaskets, because these brackets on each side of the engine that you take off go right here, all up in this mess. So you got to kind of move the engine harness out of the way, put this on. The engine harness feeds through that all, and then it like stays out of the way of the fuel rails, all that. You'll see. Anyway, these bolts are, this bolt is really hard to get when that's on, and the engine harness being out of the way. So I'm going to do the valve cover gaskets on each side, get those done, and then I'll put these brackets back on each side. Make sure the harness is good on this side, harness is good on that side. Just so you know, this tube, the crankcase breather, this tube that comes off right here goes to the intake manifold right there, and then this one goes to this hose on the intake tube up here. This hose goes to the intake tube right there, that goes to the blow off. This tube that connects to the heater pipe, the heater, heater core pipe goes right here to the intake manifold right there. This hose that's connected to this throttle body sensor, I don't know where that goes yet, but I figured out this goes to the blow off. This hose that's connected to the heater bypass pipe, this one right there, goes up to the throttle body, or the intake manifold, or the throttle body. Yeah, I might be tripping. Goes right here. So now I'm going to do the valve cover gaskets. You know who it is. So time belt covers are back on, harmonic balancers back on. The valve covers are on. New valve cover gaskets. Everything's back on. Brackets are back on. Harness is all back, put back together. Hoses are all back on. And good stuff like that. The valve cover's back on over here. Everything's good to go over here. Brackets back on. Harness is all good. Hoses are all good. everything is good to go on this engine. The next step's going to be I have to make a block-off plate for this side of the exhaust. The driver's side, I have to weld in an O2 sensor bung right here. On the passenger side, I still got to try and get this O2 sensor out. Otherwise, the new one's going to cost like $250. What? So, alternator's back on, AC compressor's back on, AC belt tensioner's back on, harmonic balancer on, pump on, belts are on. They're both tight. Timing belt cover's back on, obviously. So I was able to actually get this O2 sensor out. It got pretty beat up on the way out because I had to heat it up big time and get some vice grips on it. It's good. It just isn't gonna take a wrench to get it into its new home. So now what I gotta do is I gotta weld an O2 sensor bung either in the up pipe or right here in the manifold. I don't know where I'm gonna put it, but Stainless Bros O2 sensor bung. Gonna go right there somewhere for this beat up girl. And to do that, I'm gonna get this engine up in the air. I'm gonna get the new engine up in the air with the hoist so that I have better access, you know. I don't really have good access right here, this way. So, gonna do the O2 sensor bung, and then I'm gonna get the engine up and do the oil filter cooler housing. And got the new hoses in, new clamps, new hoses. Alrighty, well, I'm back. So, had to get a new O2 sensor, Denso, because the old one was stripped, the threads were messed up, and I didn't want to mess up the brand new O2 sensor bung that I just welded into the OEM exhaust manifold. I would not want to mess these threads up. You don't want to mess the threads up. So, instead of just blapping it in there, I talked with the owner of the car and Evan, and he decided that he didn't want to do that either. So, decided to get a new O2 sensor, even though it was a little pricey, but it's the right decision. So, now, as you can see, the engine is off the pallet, on the hoist. Now what I need to do is take the engine mounts off this engine, take the new engine mounts off of the old engine, these guys, put those on this engine. I might have to take this oil pan off, I don't know, it's a little dented, but if it's not leaking and the seal is good, then we're good. But I gotta get the engine on the stand and flip it over to really take a good look at it, or just get up under there and hoist the engine up and get up under there and look at it. But either way, get that done. All of the turbo hosing, cooling lines, oil return lines are all on. This is on, this bracket is, I got this hose on, this bracket on, this hose came in, this is a new hose under here. The oil feed line. Yeah, everything is on. Everything is good to go. So, move forward with those things that I just told you. Alrighty, so the engine mounts are on both sides, and the front side exhaust is wrapped with very nice, expensive fiberglass wrap, exhaust wrap. It came out alright, considering there's a mini flex pipe right here. The pipe's not straight, so it came out pretty good, considering this stuff doesn't really like to bend or morph, so it does a little, but. And now I have fiberglass in my arms, so that feels great. That feels good, because I was messing with some old fiberglass wrap that was
Yeah, bad idea. This stuff, way better. Looks way better. Alright, so Mr. Muscle Man over here decided that this is the best way I can do this with this engine because I don't have another engine stand. So I basically lifted this engine up, put it on its back on the box so that I could access this oil pan. Because this oil pan is good. I just resealed this oil pan, I don't know, a few months ago when this engine was out of the car. Because this engine, I gotta take this pan off and swap it with this pan because the shippers or whoever decided to mess this oil pan up. It's cracked right here. Got a pretty good ding right here. So even though the seal looks good, the pan is screwed up, which sucks because now I gotta take this pan off, take that pan off, and swap them. So as you can see, I got this engine on the stand, flipped over, and I got that engine, which kind of flipped over. So I'm going to be swapping the oil pans. Things are going to get a little bit messy. And they've gotten very messy. Yeah, because that's on its side, and it's on a box, and there's oil everywhere, all over the box. That box is pretty much ruined. So, yeah, that oil pan is off. And now what I gotta do is, like I said, probably take this heat shield off. But also, if you folks would like to see what the contents are of the oil pan that was on the old engine, that one, this is what it is. There is a lot of metal in this oil pan. A lot. So now I gotta clean the heck out of this oil pan, which I already did once. And now I gotta do it again. Or I could just throw it back on there, you know, say, F it. Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that. Nope, not gonna do that. So, gotta clean this oil pan up real good. Clean the mating surface up on the new block. And also clean up that oil pile of oil. Gotta clean that up. Don't want to just leave that laying around. So, gotta do a couple things. Get back at you. And I was wondering if you could look up a part and see if you have it in stock. I got the part number. AutoZone. Pay your men more so they can know more. Come on. The people that work at AutoZone. You gotta know some stuff to work there. But I wouldn't work there. You don't get paid shit. You don't get paid anything. So I wouldn't work there. So anybody with knowledge isn't gonna work there. But if they paid like $25 an hour, I think a lot more people that are a lot more knowledgeable would work at AutoZone. Word up.
Shed a couple tails on the street. For real. I can almost taste it. Something like my morning coffee. You would think the moon's been walking. There's something in the way you're talking. I call you when I'm wasted, and I be spilling all my problems.
I don't know how crazy my hair looks. Anyway, so the new oil cooler seal came in. So I'm going to put that on. I'm going to get the oil cooler back on. Or on, not back on, but on the new engine. Then I'm going to
put the oil pan on, and then I gotta make a block off plate for this side of the exhaust,
And then this engine is gonna be ready to go back in that car.
Okay, so the oil cooler housing is on. The nut bolt is tight. This hose is on. Hose clamps. This hose is on. The pipe that goes across is on. Bolted down. Going to the water pump housing. That hose, clamps, all good, brand new stuff. Nice and nice. I now have the oil pan gasket surface on the block cleaned up, prepped, and ready to receive sealant. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to put the sealant, I'm going to lay the sealant down, and then I'm going to take the oil pan that I cleaned up. May not look like it, but this surface is clean of all the old gasket maker. All that. The oil pan is clean. There's some more metal in there. So that's all good. Okay, so the oil pan is on. The gasket is down. I put the oil pan on, put the bolts in, hand tighten the bolts. Let it sit for about 10 minutes just to let the sealant set up a little bit, and then torqued the bolts to, it's 4 foot-pounds. That's it, really. 4 or 5 foot-pounds.
3.6, 4, whatever you want to do.
But just torqued all the bolts to, I did 5 foot-pounds, or a little, like 4 or 5 foot-pounds. So that's good. I'm going to put the oil fill tube back on. I'm going to put the new oil filter on. I'm going to make a block off plate for this real quick, and
Then this puppy's going, then it's going back in. Finally. Finally going back in.
alrighty, so the block off plate is now on, gasket in, so that is good, tight, engine mounts are on, oil filters on, oil pans on, everything's good. So now I'm going to flip the engine back over, get it on the hoist, put the clutch and pressure plate back on. Okay, so the engine is in. The engine is in. Everything is buttoned back up. I just have to throw the intercooler back on and fill it with fluids, oil, power steering fluid, and coolant. Gotta fill it all up, and I gotta just reconnect these fuel lines and stuff. And then put the battery in, obviously. But the engine is in, everything is tight, everything is good to go. It needs fuel! Love is what makes a Subaru a Subaru. So it wasn't starting. No spark, crankshaft position sensor, circuit A, low, or whatever. This is what happened when I tried to pull the old crankshaft position sensor out. Yeah, it broke and it's stuck in there. And if I try and drill to pull it out, stuff is going to go into the timing cover belt area. So I gotta take the radiator back out, drain the coolant, take the timing belt, take the harmonic balancer off, pulleys off, the AC belt tensioner off, the timing belt covers off. And then I gotta get that crankshaft position sensor the fuck out of there. Hey, bud? Yeah. Okay, so after about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, This is what came out of crank sensor. That is the metal housing, and all of this copper was in there, along with 2 magnets. So, yeah, after flatheading, prying, vacuuming, breaking the old sensor, we finally got it out. And the new sensor, or the old new sensor, is now in there. It's probably not even gonna be the sensor, but I had to get that out anyway. It's probably the timing. Probably gonna have to drain the coolant and take the radiator out, time the covers off, and all that good stuff. But I'm gonna put it back together right now and start it. Try and start it at least.
What codes are you coming up with? No pending codes either.
Okay, so it wasn't starting, and I found the reason why. The crank sprocket. For whatever reason, the crank sprocket on the engine, new engine, was different than the one on the old engine. This has like 24 teeth or whatever, and this has 6. Tried to take this off the old engine, it cracked because it's seized on there. This came off the new engine with ease. I went and got a new one from Subaru. Thankfully, they had one in stock at the Dan Perkins in Milford Subaru, so that's awesome. I put the timing belt back on. All the timing marks are lined up correctly. The timing marks on the crank sprocket, and these timing marks. They won 20-5. They are all lined up, and everything is good. That is most likely the reason this thing was not throwing any spark. ECU didn't know where the crank was. So, now I'm going to put it all back together and start this bad boy up. Let's do it. Okay, so now, as you can see, the car's not in here. My lip is up. The car is still throwing the cam sensor code. Gonna have to, it's out of here. I gotta put the front bumper back on and the front wide body, but that's about it, and the headlights. So what was going on with the car is put the new crank sprocket back on, and it then had started, but was throwing a camshaft position sensor code. I then swapped the camshaft position sensors from the new motor and the old motor. It was still throwing that code, and after a bunch of research, I came to the conclusion that sometimes these old Subarus are known to have a ghost cam sensor code, although through the research, people that had this code were able to still drive the car. Evan's car had the code and would run, but wouldn't build any boost. It'd break up under acceleration on the test drive I took it on. And it was possibly because of the engine. Lo and behold, after starting it and running it, the new quote-unquote engine was essentially blown. It was seeping oil out of the heads, out of the exhaust. It was burning a lot of smoke, a lot of oil. And so Evan is getting a replacement engine from the engine company that he got it from. Luckily, they do a 30-day warranty after install. So that's kind of the story for this Subaru. It might be back for that engine. I don't know. But here's a fun video of me painting the front lip. But that's the Subaru for ya. Sucks that the new engine was kind of blown up. Even though they did a compression test, supposedly, before he bought the engine. So, yep.
Smell you on my pillow, can't get you out my bed. Am I still on your mind? Yeah, the way that our bodies are catching all these different angles got me caught up in the moment.
Okay.
So the lip is painted. Lips painted. And now I'm going to bring the car back in and then just throw the front bumper on, wide body kit, just throw that stuff back on. And then he's going to be picking it up. The bug eye. The bug eye. Looks pretty cool, that front bumper or headlights. Oh boy. That's what you get at Red Barn Builds. Quality, performance. Red Barn Builds, 99. Out.
Not for too long. I'm still chasing the